I'm sure over the next several weeks, TNT and coffee and conversations, and in particular at the retreat, I'll talk about some of my experiences and some things that I think that God showed me, continues to show. But one of the things that I know I talked about at 8 o'clock is one thing I realized is that so many of us have yet to truly live. There is an author by the name of Robert A. Johnson. He penned a book entitled Living Your Unlived Life. And it struck a chord within me because I think, if truth be told, so many of us are living, but there is a part of us that has yet to live. And it is the part of us that we have ignored or distracted ourselves away from. And you get to a point in your life where that unlived part of you begins to cry out for attention and desires to come forth. And what that unlived part of you is the part of you that you have failed to integrate into your life, maybe for fear, doubt, unbelief in yourself. But one thing I realized during this 40-day sabbatical was that one of the signs that you are no longer living and in some ways are in cruise control is when, and I said this morning, when you have free time, but your free time seems like torture. Because you don't know what to do. You're so used to going and being busy and finding things to distract your days that when there's no schedule, you feel like you're on punishment. And that to me is so real. And I had to learn that you forget how to unwind, you forget how to decompress, you forget how to relax, you forget how to have fun. You're so used to grinding that enjoyment becomes low on the totem pole. And then what you discover, God gives you a directive to relax and have fun. And then something within your spirit is disobedient because it resents the fact that God is not trying to give you an assignment, but give you joy. And that to me is one of the things that is I think a sign that you're not living anymore. You're living or have an existence of overwhelming contentment. Afraid to say how dissatisfied you are with your life. For fear that somehow dissatisfaction and verbalizing it would seem like ungratefulness. Whereas maybe God is waiting for you to express how dissatisfied you are so that you can begin to awaken the part of you that is waiting to come alive. It is a sad thing when misery becomes your MO. And joy is like a familiar friend that has been so long that you've seen the friend that you don't recognize when they're right in front of you. That is how many of our lives are. And I discovered this notion through this book of living the unlived life. This morning I used as a scriptural context John 10:10, when Jesus, and if you were here this morning, we had a good time, and Jesus said, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But I've come that you may have life and have it more abundantly. Check that out on the website. It is, I mean, for me it helped. Well, I'm gonna check it out because I'm gonna look at it again. But I want today to look at a scene that, I think is alive with so many things. So if you would stand with me. Turn to Luke 5. Luke 5. And it's about 11 verses I'm going to read, first 11 verses. Luke 5. Once, while Jesus was standing beside the lake of Gennesaret, the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God. He saw two boats there at the shore of the lake. The fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little way from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the crowds from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we have worked all night long, but have caught nothing. Yet if you say so, I will let down the nets." When they had done this, they caught so many fish that their nets were beginning to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them, and they came and filled both boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." For he and all who were with him were amazed at the catch of fish that they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching people." When they had brought their boats to shore, they left everything and followed him. Let's pray. God, we bless you today and we thank you for the moments in our own lives when you push us into uncharted territory. And in a spiritual sense, force us to sink or swim. God, give us courage and strength to not allow fear to take hold of us. Give us courage and strength, oh God, that we won't continue to allow our timidity to rule the day. We will begin to think seriously about our own boldness and begin to live tenacious lives filled with adventure and joy and love. Because truthfully, oh God, too many of us are living shallow lives, fearful of what could go wrong. But the deep thing, oh God, is that in your presence, there is no wrong, there's only redeemed. For you can redeem even missteps and mistakes and faults. Thank you today, oh God, for reminding us that we are redeemable. We are redeemable. That you love us and that we belong to you. Thank you for this opportunity, oh God. And today, let today be a moment of profound encounter with your presence through your word. We love you, God. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Remain standing and just allow me to read that last portion of verse 10, part of verse 10, and then verse 11. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching people," or in some of our translations, a fisher of men. When they had brought their boats to shore, they left everything and followed him. You could take your seat. I want to speak from the idea, living the unlived life, part 2. Living the unlived life. There will come a point in your life where you realize that all of the structure you have tried to create and all of the order you have tried to orchestrate is no longer good enough to meet the challenges you face. There will come a point in your life that the ideas and sentiments that have kept you and guided you for a long time are no longer adequate to ignite your spirit or even instigate your soul. You wake up one morning or in the middle of your day, maybe at work, maybe traveling, and all of a sudden, a profound sense of dissatisfaction hits you. And what is going on? Something in your spirit, something in your soul is longing to discover what it would be like to follow a different path from the one you're on. Something in your spirit wants to go another way. It causes a tremendous amount of turmoil in your life because you have been living a life, again, that has been shaped by certain structures and certain ideas and certain parameters and certain boundaries that have kept you. And then all of a sudden, in your spirit, you begin to hear the distant sound of a different drum beat that is longing to pull you down a different road, down a different path. And you hear it. I mean, you hear it in such profound ways. It is clear. You know something is pulling you and something is driving you. And if you're not perceptive, you might think you are losing your mind. Here's the deep thing. The deep thing is that something inside of you is asking you to give up your life. That is the sound, the feeling. And the reason why you feel like you're going crazy is because that sound, that beat, that pull is trying to get you to walk away from what you know. And in your mind, walking away from what you know is not only risky, but crazy. Who takes the chance to start over again? We've spent all this time building up these structures, building up these ideas of who we are, and who wants to start again? Who wants to disrupt the safe space you've created? Who wants to mess with or defile the life that you have been living? Or who wants to cause disorder or confusion in their life by trying to honor the sound of a different beat? But no matter how you try to get away from it, in the strangest moments, you can hear that sound. You can hear again the distant whispers of a life within you calling and screaming to come out. And then the turmoil again begins. Because the fight is not really my way or God's way. The fight is life or life. It is not life or death. It is the life you know versus the life you don't know. It is the life that you've built up filled with some level of safety and security, and the life that is calling you to try a greater way, a different path. And that life asks for a few things. The one thing it asks for is courage. Courage to not only hear the beat, but to march to it. Because it's one thing to know there's a better life for me, to see it, but it takes courage to actually live it. You can see it, you can talk about it, you can know it's there, you can dissect it, you can analyze it, but to actually dare to turn and live it is something different. Or there will be people who encourage you, take a chance, step out, watch the Lord bless you. The deep thing is that oftentimes that advice comes from the lips of persons who have not done that themselves. It is amazing how people who have never taken that kind of risk encourage us to do it. And it's not bad advice. It's just not advice based on experiential knowledge. Until maybe one day, Patrice, something happens in your life, some moment, some great intrusion, maybe by God, comes, and here's what happens. God arrives in an intrusive way because God has heard the cries of your unlived life. God intrudes, shows up intrusively. And you ask yourself, I didn't ask for this. God says, I know you didn't, but you did. You didn't, but you did. Something within you was screaming out to God to come and deliver, come and bring through, come to break through. And you did not do it, but you did. It was that feeling of dissatisfaction, that feeling of misery, that feeling of grief and agony that began to push your unlived life to a point where it could no longer remain silent. It began to cry out to God, asking not for deliverance, but for a help out. And something happens. God shows up. Oh my God. I had to say that with emphasis because God's intrusive arrival is not easy. God shows up. When God responds, remember this, remember very quickly, and I might be a little long today because I ain't been here in a minute, but remember when God, and you got to get this, this is important, when God delivered Israel out of Egypt, God told Moses the reason why he was doing such a major move was because he heard the cries of Israel, and the cries of Israel caused God, one, to do what God had never done and move in a mighty show of power because God heard the cries of his oppressed people. Now let's get particular. What major, intrusive, unexpected move will God do when God hears the cries of the oppressed person in you? The person in you that you have kept under chains, bound, afraid to get out because you didn't want that person to mess up what you had built so long, and you didn't want that person to mess up what you had spent so much time trying to put together. And God shows up in the most unexpected ways. And what is God responding to? God is responding again to the distant cries of the oppressed person in you who is waiting to come out. I hope you can hear this. God is responding not to you because you maybe didn't have the courage to say anything, but then that unlived part of you, the part of you that was longing to push you into your best days, begins to cry out to God. Why? Because the unlived part of you says that he or she has grown so content with what they've lived that they're afraid to experience me. And so the unlived you cries out to God, and God shows up. God shows up. And the intrusion is monumental, yet sometimes subtle, yet monumental. You know what's amazing, Kevin? God comes with this monumental intrusiveness. And you know how monumental it is? It's so monumental, Patrice, that when it arrives, you actually don't think it's for you. It's so subtle that you dismiss it because you think the arrival is for somebody else. Oh, God. Okay, you don't get it? Here we go. Peter, his brother, and his business partners are fishing. Jesus is over here on the shore teaching. Watch this. While he is teaching, well, if I had some time there, y'all don't even know, boy. While he is teaching, the crowds drawn to his message are so overwhelming that he runs out of space on dry ground. They back him to the edge of the water. And Peter, Andrew, James, and John are washing the nets because they have caught nothing. They see the crowd. They've been hearing what is going on, but all they can focus on is the fruitlessness of their working for that day. They haven't caught anything. They're back to shore because they're not using the boat. And Jesus says, hold on. Let me borrow your boat and use it as a place from which I can deliver my teaching. The people are on the shore. Jesus now has pushed back from the shoreline in Peter's vessel, and he begins to teach the people. Now you have to imagine that as he's teaching, Peter in his mind is maybe thinking, well, at least today the boat is good for something, because it sure didn't help me catch any fish. Look at the subtle intrusiveness of God. Then all of a sudden, teaching is done. And then the lesson begins. Peter, go out to the deep water and drop your net. Peter said, Lord, we've fished all night and we've caught nothing. But if you say so, we'll go. And they go, and they drop the nets, and before you know it, the fish start piling in the net. So much so that they had to ask John and James to come over and get some of the net and the fish because the fish were so much. Y'all going to enjoy this, I believe. What they had caught was so much that it started to cause their boats to sink. Sinking on the edge of success. You have to see this. This was the most successful moment. And they are sinking because the boat has too many fish. They are overwhelmed. They sense something profound is happening. And Peter instantly allows his insecurity to grab hold of him. In the presence of his success, all he can perceive is his unworthiness. He can't even celebrate that moment because in his mind, he doesn't deserve it. I know I'm talking to somebody here. Look at it. He said, I'm not worthy. Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man. Jesus hears that, and he says, do not be afraid. Afraid of what? He said, do not be afraid. From now on, you'll be catching people. Fisher of men. And it said, and here's the part that's mind-blowing. And I'm speaking specifically about Peter now, left everything and followed him. Okay, now, just for a few minutes I'll talk and then we'll be done, but I want to unpack a few things here that I think are interesting. I've read this so often, and I've quoted this thing. I mean, we always talk about it. You'll be a fisher of men. You'll be a fisher of men, Serena. We say it all the time. You'll be a fisher of men. And do you realize that when you think about it, it makes no sense? Think about the line. I mean, it makes no sense. Surely, the words, you'll catch people, not only does it not make sense, but two, it shouldn't be enough to make you leave everything. Here we go. It's not really enough to make you leave everything and follow. I want you to hear this. I'll make you a fisher of men. I'll make you catch people. And then you think about the business, the family, the wife, the mother-in-law, and he leaves everything off of that one line. Makes no sense, right? Unless Jesus' statement tapped something in Peter that had not been tapped before. See, it may not have been so much the words, but it was the timing. Maybe in this moment, Jesus' invitation struck a nerve in Peter for a different kind of possibility in his own life. Jesus says these words, come with me, I'll make you fish people, you'll catch people. And something within Peter, then on the hearing of those words, was willing to leave everything that symbolized his life to explore what he did not know. Something that he heard pushed him to this place. It spoke not to Peter, but it spoke to something else. Let me show you what it spoke to. Here's a deep part. Can you imagine this? Now, let me just show you why I believe in my heart that Jesus taps in to the turmoil. He taps in to the turmoil within Peter. He taps in to the struggle within Peter. He taps into the fight between the lived and the unlived life. He does that. Why do you know? Because watch this. What was Peter? A fisherman. On that day, Peter has the greatest breakthrough of his fishing career. He has the greatest success. Watch this. He has the greatest success of his fishing career. But in the midst of his greatest success, he's still willing to leave that behind. There was a time when Peter would have died to have this many fish, because those fish translated into sustenance for his family and provision. It translated into helping him elevate his own status within culture. But in the midst of his greatest success is not enough to keep him on the boat. You know, I hear this. You got to hear this. It is not enough to keep Peter there. You have to hear. His life that he knew, the familiar life, having success in the familiar life did not cause him to want to stay there. Because why? What Jesus awakened in Peter by showing him the catching of the fish was that there's something more and something possible beyond what you know. I'm gonna work through some of y'all today. He sees a different possibility. Jesus points him. Not only does he speak to his spirit, but he points him to an alternative possibility. Look at the story. Before Jesus lets him experience what seems implausible and impossible, he first tells him, go out a little deeper. The problem is, Peter, you've developed your fishing craft in the same spaces. You've been living the same way. You've been doing the same thing. How do you expect different results? You are doing what is familiar. You're going to your typical spaces and think you're going to get something different. And he says, dare to leave the shallow water. Oh, here it is. Here it is. The problem for Peter was that their vessels at that time were small, frail crafts. It was safer to fish in the shallow water so that the risk of sinking would not be very possible. Watch it. And now Jesus says, look here, with your small little boat. Okay, let me... with your little life that you think is insignificant. Yeah. With your small, narrow way of seeing your life. He says, go out into the deep water. I know you've never been there. I know you're fearful, but when you go into the deep water, don't go to deep water with sinking in mind. You got to hear this because what happens to so many of us is that we want to go to the deep water, but you can't go to deep water with sinking in your mind. Go out into the deep. Go to the area, one, you've never been, two, a little dangerous. Go and then drop your nets. Part of the problem is that you've never let your nets be extended. Oh my God. You've dropped them in shallow water. You've never let them go deeper down. Drop them in the deep water. Let them fully extend and watch what will come into your path. Oh. Here. He goes to the deep water. He drops the nets. And the fish start jumping in. Look at, they start jumping in. And all of a sudden, something within Peter started to move. Julian, maybe, is this the day that my life will no longer be the same? I'm seeing what I've never seen before. But my spirit knows that something is going on. There's something more going on here than just fish. There's something more going on than the new job you want to thank God for. There's something deeper than the relationship that is manifesting itself. There's something deeper that is happening. It is not just about favor and blessings. It's about possibilities. A possibility is now awakening in Peter. In one day, he did more than he had done seemingly in a lifetime because he dared to go where he had never gone. He dared to take his shallow boat into deep territory and then drop the net and see what would happen. And now here's what happens. He begins to pull up the fish, and what happens? The net breaks. The net breaks as a sign of the abundance of what Peter has caught. Watch this. That he is now, the breaking nets, Wayne, symbolize the level of success whoa, hold on, that he is now experiencing. Now you got to watch this. This is for somebody here today. I'm going to be real quick. But listen to this. That with the success that is now coming, the nets are breaking, which means that he's losing some of what he got. So that's it there. The nets are breaking, but the breaking nets are not just a sign of the possibilities. The breaking nets are a sign for Peter that something must now change. The nets are breaking. Overflow, overload, but the success can turn into sinking real quick. Especially let me pause. Especially if you're not willing to expand the reach of your breakthrough. Let me pause for a second and drop this in somebody's spirit who's now experiencing the overflow, who's experiencing the abundance. You, who your net is starting to stretch and break, you better call some other folk over to help you and participate, or else you will drown. Your abundance and your overflow ain't just for you. If I keep it all to myself, I drown. You didn't get that. Ain't nothing worse than seeing a person drown in their own success. And so what he must do, John, James, come get some of this. Oh God, come get some of what's happening. I know he just did it for me, but we can all get the breakthrough. Come get some of this. I love this. I love this. Listen, they come, they share. Nets are broken. And now, Peter, oh, thank you, God. We're going to be here a little. We got to start late today, but watch this. Hear this. Hear this. So this is it. This is it. Thank you, Lord. This is it. Here, success, breakthrough, abundance, overflow. And Peter says, get away from me. You see this? Success, overflow, breakthrough, abundance. And it scares him to the point that all he can do is to fall back into his insecurity. Get away from me, Lord. I'm a sinful man. You blessed me, but I don't think you know me. Because if you knew me, you might not bless me. And I don't want to get a blessing that I don't deserve. In that very moment, it is as if unspoken way, Jesus had to help him understand, Peter, this is grace. This is grace. I know you're unworthy. I know you got issues, but watch how I still bless your life. I know you're not the best candidate, but it's your time, Peter. God has heard the cries of your unlived life. It's your time, Peter. Oh, can I help somebody here? Don't ever run away when it's your time. You got to tell yourself, it's my time. And my time is not connected to my perfection. It's connected to his grace. My time. You sitting around in your fear talking about why now? Why not now? Why me? Why not you? Can you find a better candidate for your blessings? That's what he does, Ruthie. He tries to run. Watch it. You ain't ready. He tries to run by standing still. What do you mean? You know there are two ways of running. You didn't know that? When you're terrified and your insecurities have the best of you, there's two ways of running. You either run away or you push people away. Running is about creating distance. And so you either get away or push people away. Either way, you're trying to create space. Especially, think about it, what's going on with you. You're at the point of your greatest success, your greatest breakthrough, your greatest blessing, and you are trying to push away the one who brought this to you. Because you don't think you are. But the unlived you ain't having it. The unlived you ain't having it. I'm be done. We here too late. But here it is. A few things. Yeah. Here's a few things you got to know. One, you got to make the decision whether you're going to live, whether you're going to engage in shallow living or deep living. Shallow living is based on your ability. Deep living is based on God. See, shallow living is the kind of living that you can manage. You just stand up. Deep living causes you to trust on God while you're wading in the water. Shallow living versus deep living. Okay, that's one thing. Here's what the other thing is. Ronnie, you like Peter have to make up in your mind that now, once you decide to enter the deep living and you experience a breakthrough, don't let the breakthrough terrify you. Terrify you to the point that you're willing to get away from it by any means necessary. Be real. How many people you pushed away because it was too good? How many situations did you run away from because you didn't think it was really for you? Oh, that'll hit you? Let me back up. How many times you forfeited what could have been the greatest thing to you, for you, because you did not think you were worthy? All right, that ain't you. Okay. Here's what you got to do then. Here you are living this safe, comfortable life. And the life that you've been living, you know, is not the fullness of who you can be. But it doesn't cost you anything. It's the shallow living. And you're sitting there constructing a whole world in reality. Let me help you. That's an illusion. Especially if the unlived life is calling your name. That's the illusion. So in order to come out of the illusion, you have to disillusion the illusion. You know what I'm saying? You have to begin. Let me show you what happens. How God intrusively disillusions you. God comes and shows you a possibility that super exceeds what you could do on your own. And then God said, look, you thought you could do the best for you. Look what I did when you didn't even cooperate with me. I did this and you didn't even want it. I did this and you were running from me. I did this and you didn't even ask for it. Now, if I can do this when you didn't want it, what can happen when you begin to yield to it? That's what he says. He says, disillusion you. Why? Why does God have to disillusion you from the illusion by showing you the possibility? Because he realized that you have not been trapped in living life. You have been trapped in a life that has been living you. Trapped in a life that has been living you. God comes to disillusion the illusion of the power of the life you've been living to show you what is possible. You've been fishing, and the end result of your fishing is cleaning empty nets. I show up, tell you to go out a little deeper. You don't have enough room to hold what I'm bringing in. And all you can do is talk about how unworthy you are. The nets began to break, and Peter got scared. Why? The same reason you got scared. Same reason you get scared. When you become so wedded to an identity that has been developed, so wedded to an identity that has been developed that you're afraid to step in to the unlived. Your identity is connected to what you know, what you've been experiencing, but you've been afraid to step into the unfamiliar. Why is it so difficult? Because Peter, like us, was relying on habits that limited his possibility. He was fishing in shallow, familiar water, and there were no fish there. He was going through the motions and expecting something different. He was getting up, going to work every day, coming home. Nothing yielded, fruitlessness, and then was satisfied with that, feeling empty, feeling underused, underdeveloped, and was satisfied with that. He began to rely on habits and rituals and practices that did not contribute to possibilities in his life. Everything he did reinforced what he already knew. Nothing he was doing pushed to a new possibility. He lived a restricted life. Oh, y'all looking at me funny? Watch, listen to this. Here's the real problem, and I'm gonna leave with this because this might be too much for somebody. The reason why living the unlived life is so difficult is because many of us would rather have stability than authenticity. We make a commitment to stability at the expense of authenticity. We rather have the manageable, controllable, nice life, at least it's stable, even if it's not true to who we are. You'd rather do it, live a lifetime, build your pension, get retirement, raise your children, watch them go to college, work a job, retire, buy a house, have a nice car, have money in the bank, have clothes on your back, able to take vacations. Miserable. Let me help you. You used to go on trips and you felt good. Now they do nothing for you. There were places you used to go that made you feel good. They do nothing for you. There were things you always wanted, and when you finally got them, did nothing for you. Why? Because your spirit was trying to tell you that way of living is dead. Cross over into a new way of being. You want stability? A good friend of mine was preaching a couple of weeks ago while I was on my sabbatical. Sometimes he says things I don't always agree with, but this one thing he said jumped in my spirit. He said, here's the problem for those who are truly been anointed and called by God. You ready? He said the problem for those who've really been called and anointed is that you're trying to live a balanced life. You can be anointed by God and try to live a balanced, stable life with all this divinity beating you up in your spirit. You trying to live on the safe life, but maybe you ain't been called to balance. You've been called to greatness. Maybe you ain't been called to that. You gotta be authentic. Be who God has called you to be. And if it means losing what you know, you'll get what you can never imagine. No. Jesus spoke to Peter, but he spoke to his unlived self. Peter, you've been fishing, and I showed you today the greatest catch you've ever had. And now I want to see, does it mean anything to you anymore? Can you imagine getting to a point in your life where the success you've been dreaming of loses all value? I mean, you've been waiting for it, building your life for it. You've been doing everything you can, contributing to it, waiting for your greatest moment, and then you get it, and it means nothing. Not because it has no value, but because there's more to you than what you've been waiting on. Hold on. No. Somebody got to hear this. You've been waiting for something, and what you've been waiting on has no value because of not what it is, but because of who you are. There is more to you. Oh, I got to help somebody. And here comes Jesus making the statement that pushed Peter to his unlived self. Peter knew what it was to fish. He now knew what it was to have a great success, but he never knew what it was to take a chance and live a different life. Peter, today is great. You've had your great moment. You've had the greatest success, but I dare you to come with me. Because if you come with me, you will do things and see things you've never thought were possible. That if you think catching fish is something, watch what happens when you begin to get people for God. Peter, look what happens when you begin to call people to greater living. Watch what happens when you begin to call people to a greater purpose. No, it means nothing to have success for yourself, but when you can open up possibilities for other people, you can't imagine what that means. Look at somebody and tell them, we're going to go. Look at somebody and tell them, I'm tired. Yeah, I'm tired. Tell them again, I'm tired. Now look at somebody and tell them, it might not look like it, but I really am tired. I've been doing this too long. I've been living like this too long. I've been saying the same stuff too long. I've been going to the same places too long. I've been hanging out with the same people too long. It's time for me to cross over into my unlived life. I wish I had somebody here today who could testify that sometimes the springboard into your future is your weariness of your present. You didn't catch me. That I'm tired of where I am and I want more life, because life has more for me. Do you believe that? No, don't play. Do you believe? Tell yourself there's more for me. There's more for me. Come on, I gotta help somebody. Say it till you mean it. There's more for me. There's more for me. I might have some things right now, but there's more for me. If that don't work to you, tell yourself this: there's more to me. There's more to me than you could ever imagine. And I want to get you to a place in your life where you can now send out invitations. Send out invitations to the people who you call friends and tell them there's a stranger in town that I need you to meet. You ain't never seen this side of me before. It's the side of me that's been waiting to come out and live for God. And is there anybody in here today who's ready to live your unlived life? Look at your neighbor and tell them, neighbor, today is a new day. Today is a new day. This is my time. This is my season. All things are passed away, and behold, all things are made new. Is there anybody here who's ready to go over? New days are dawning, new possibilities, new joy, new peace, new love, new happiness, new blessing, new breakthrough, a new you. Is there anybody here that can give God some praise? Stop hiding. Stop letting people beat you into safety. Start living the life you know is inside of you. That's been calling you. It's been speaking to you. Stop growing content with things that have no meaning for you anymore. And the sign you know it's time to live the unlived part of you. It's when you get those things and they mean nothing. They mean nothing. Because you know there's a part of you waiting to be fed. Waiting to be fed. I dare you to start living deeply. Don't be afraid. You can't live deeply with God and be afraid. The enemy or the devil is not the enemy. It's you. You don't want to risk ridicule, chastisement. Think about it. Think about it. Nobody else was in deep water. How crazy did Peter look? Let me tell you though, when you live in deeply, don't be influenced by people who only live in shallow water. If they only like to go in knee deep and God is calling you to greatness, know what you tell them? Watch me while I swim to the deep end of the pool. God is calling you to live the unlived life. There's a part of you that has been screaming to God, come help me, deliver me, come get me out of what I know. This life brings me no joy. This life brings me no peace. And yet, God, I'm afraid to try and go to the deep. And you have so rationalized in your mind why it's easy to just clean nets until that part of you starts to scream because it hears a different beat. Something in you wants and knows that there's more. Don't know how to access it. Come on, let's get real. You don't know how to get it. You don't know what to do. You don't know how to break pattern. You don't know how to break routines. You do not know what to do. You see it right there, but don't know how to move. It takes so much to start over. It takes so much to go there and do that, and you don't know how to get it. So many things you begin to say you have to do that if I wish I would have done this 10 years ago, it would have been easier. But no, don't say that, because 10 years ago you didn't know what you know now. And so maybe now is the right time. That it's the right time, but now it's just waiting on your courage. I was watching a commercial the other day. It said Picasso didn't paint his first masterpiece until he was 56. And you sitting around here talking about it's too late. I read a quote a couple of weeks ago while I was on my sabbatical, and it said that you can no longer be satisfied with a life that is beneath you. It said it takes less than a week to accept your destiny. It don't even take a long time. What are you waiting for? You already know what it is to do what you've been doing. You have no clue what it is to try something different and to really live, to broaden the boundaries of your own possibility. And you know when God is pulling you, you feel it. You don't know how to name it, you don't know how to, but you feel it in your spirit. You know when God is pulling you to something different. You know when God is saying, come with me. Come into the deep water with me and watch what happens. But watch the deep thing. When you get the invitation from God to go to the deep water, it's a setup. Because what happens in the deep water? Breakthrough. Breaking nets. Ship begins to sink. The invitation to come out the deep water is only to present you with new possibilities. The next challenge is, will you follow? That's all. I want to do a call today. I know that the hour is late, but hey, I'm back, so hey. I'm happy. But listen, this invitation is not to join the church right now, but the invitation is I want to pray with those of us who've heard the call to go to the deep but are afraid. You heard it, you hear it, and in fact, you can't stop hearing it, gnawing at your spirit, beating on the doors of your heart. Deep water.